A van with Wanda's Antiques painted on the side slowly crawled to a halt in front of the Cave Hill Cemetery. The day was a quiet, somber one. Today was Graveyard Day, a sort of morbid tradition that Wanda and Jasmine shared between them. They both had loved ones to visit. Strictly speaking, a graveyard adjoined a church and a cemetery did not, but that was splitting hairs. "Meet you back here," Wanda said with an encouraging smile. "You got it. After this, we're gonna go to Thursday's and split one of those chocolate volcano cakes, okay? Promise?" Jasmine said, lifting a finger. Wanda hooked her finger with hers, and then they parted ways. Wanda traveled the well-kept path, smiling at the pink-petaled trees and freshly trimmed grass. Peace and serenity were nice to have when visiting the dead. This wasn't a dark and scary place. It was beautiful and park-like. Finally, she arrived. "Hey, Daddy," she whispered, sitting on her legs in front of the gravestone. She smoothed her skirt a little and put the little handful of flowers she'd brought into a waiting bronze vase. The pleasant breeze tickled her hair. She closed her eyes to pretend it was his hand. She read the metal plaque secured to the stone. Jason Allen Summers, 1957 to 2010. Loving husband and father, a respected man of hearth and home. It was a pleasant way of saying he'd grown up in this city and, instead of leaving it, started a business there and lived out his days. The heart attack had been so sudden. Wanda reached and touched the stone, gripping the edge for a few moments while she bowed her head. She whispered. "I'm still running the shop. I just sold a Bram Stoker signature for tens of thousands of dollars. I know you would have been proud of me." She smiled as she spoke. "Mom is still doing good. God, she's going to be 60 this year. Not that I think she'll be joining you any time soon." She stroked the headstone a few times. "I'm still with Darren. I'm not going to marry him or anything, but he's been good to me," Wanda said, scratching the back of her head. "I'm also, She glanced around, lowering her voice. "Also still pursuing my other hobby. It's been painful, but exciting. I'd like to think you'd be proud of me for that too, right?" She waited in silence until another breeze stroked her hair. "I thought so." She smiled a little. Meanwhile, Jasmine was on the other side of the path some distance away. She sat on her legs in front of a gravestone. "Hey, Bobby," she said with some gusto, her hands in her lap. "It's me again, bothering you some more." She fished into her purse for her 500-hour pin from the animal shelter. "Look it, I've been taking care of all the homeless puppies and kitties," she said, setting it on the cobblestone in front of her. "I still miss you or some junk, but life's been pretty good, you know. Nowhere to go but up after a drunk driver kills your college sweetie." Her eyes misted a little. Sorry, I know you hated to see me cry." She sniffled and leaned, touching the headstone. "Brought you another rock," she giggled at him. "It's from the driveway, so you have a little piece of my home with you here." Leaving stones on top of a grave was a Jewish tradition. Jasmine wasn't Jewish, but Bobby had been, so it only felt right. Leaning a little, she placed it on the right side corner. There weren't any other stones. She sat there for a long time, reminiscing in the warm sunshine and gentle breezes. The better part of an hour went by. Jasmine finally heard someone coming up behind her. "Oh, there's my ride," she said softly, smiling. Wanda offered a hand and helped her to her feet. "How's Bobby?" she asked. "Always the same," Jasmine said. "Your dad?" "Still good," Wanda said with a misty-eyed smile. They hugged for a long moment before returning to the van. They had a chocolate volcano cake to eat. They would sit in the restaurant for hours, trading the same stories they always did, laughing and crying and finding comfort in each other's pain. It was never good to suffer alone, so they leaned on each other during Graveyard Day. The rest of the day at Cave Hill Cemetery passed in quiet contemplation for the dead. The trees rustled, the visitors paid their respects, and only the occasional roar of landscaping equipment broke the pleasant silence. The sun went down. Shadows turned long and frightening. There were no lights or flames on the monuments. The gates were chained closed for the day, and all of the groundskeepers had gone home. There was a lake on the property, surrounded by memorial benches for visitors to sit on. Its placid surface began to bubble and froth in one corner. An orange light shimmered somewhere in the lake bed. Strange, wriggling runes appeared just above the surface. A drenched, furry figure splashed onto the surface with a fluid cough. His long muzzle and pointed ears would have a passerby think he was a large dog on two legs. Towering out of the depths, he shook himself to fling water in all directions as he stepped onto the shore. "Traveling by cremation ash. Bah! Anubis hates this," he complained loudly. A fistful of molten ash sprayed from his mouth. "Half of these people throw their dead into bodies of water instead of keeping them safe in ceremonial urns as they should. Disgraceful." He turned to view the city from the top of a nearby hill. Its lights twinkled invitingly. He could hear police sirens, music, and plenty of people. But Anubis is here. He peered around with perked ears, rotating them about to make sure he was alone. A lone owl called, but nothing more, not even a breeze. Anubis wasn't actually the Egyptian god of the dead, but he certainly enjoyed the name. Being a meta-creature who could become a black jackal like himself, it fit him nicely, if he did say so himself. Tall, black-furred, muscular, and certainly confident, he strode through the cemetery. He stopped at a random tombstone, sniffing the air. Too old, he muttered. He passed a grave marker with a small lamb statue in front of it. A child's grave. Too young, he grumped. Ah, perfect. He found a fresh grave. It was so new that grass had not yet grown over the plot. Leaning, he grabbed a fistful. Fresh grave dirt. Ha ha! He tossed it into the air. Molten orange symbols danced in the air around him. Golden chains and white silk finery appeared around his body, falling neatly into place. There was even a dainty hip bag which he filled with several handfuls of fresh grave dirt. He dusted his hands. Better, much better. Starting forward, he made his way towards the cemetery entrance. Ooh, a fresh Jewstone. He stopped in front of a headstone that had precisely one rock on it. Leaning, he plucked it with two claws, tossed it into the air, and snapped it up like a piece of candy. His stomach felt heavy. Now he wouldn't have to eat for another week. He stroked the grave, Bobby something, thanking its occupant for the succulent ingredient. Death magic wasn't common, but it was potent if you knew what to take, what to eat, and what to sacrifice. He drummed his dog-like claws atop the grave for a few moments as though in thought, and then stood erect again and headed for the cemetery entrance. The chains held the gate closed. He lifted a hand to simply melt them off with magic. Golden arcane symbols danced in a halo around his wrists. The chains began to glow orange, and then he stopped. Respect for the dead. He glanced over his shoulder with a frown. I could hardly carry the name of Anubis if I didn't at least do that. Forgive me. He said to no one in particular, bowing his head. Leaving the partially melted chains where they were and squatting instead, he leaped over the iron fence, landing gracefully on all fours. Standing, he started down the sidewalk. He towered over a trio of homeless people, a drunk sitting on a bench, and a street corner prostitute as he went down the street towards the poorer end of town. The prostitute stared up at him, a painted mannequin of pale skin and too much makeup. She dropped her purse, staring up at him in horror. Anubis looked down at her with narrowed eyes. What are you staring at? He growled at her. He watched her eyes travel, and he gave a savage, guttural snarl. She ran screaming, dropping her purse. He helped himself to the money inside, tossing the rest away. Anubis stopped to sniff at the air. Death was coming. A lot of death. Very soon. Fishing into his hip bag and stepping into an alleyway, he murmured the sacred words and lifted his hands. Tossing a fistful of grave dirt, he watched it move and twist about in midair before slapping itself onto the brick wall. He stared at the bizarre image, stroking his chin. A long line of dead? He said with a frown, touching the image. Some standing, some sitting. Bah, what is this? Anubis does not understand. He almost smeared it in sheer frustration, but stopped himself when he heard a train in the far distance. A train, he whispered in awe, his eyes widening. A train full of dead, yes? The image fell from the wall to the ground as though in answer, and he thrust a fist into the air. Yes! Many ingredients, then. Anubis shall harvest many things from many dead. His jowls lifted to expose his white, crisscrossed teeth. And then I eat much. A few days later, Shield Maiden was running down a purse snatcher. Sure, it was a relatively small crime, but not every outing as a superhero had to be a bank robbery after all. Her legs were longer, and she was certainly in better shape than him. She didn't expect him to turn and fire a revolver, though. The bullet blasted off her shield, ricocheting into a shop window. "You are gonna get someone hurt," she shouted after him. Finally catching up before he rounded a corner, she used his momentum against him, wheeled him about by the back of his jacket, and slammed him face first into a traffic pole. He crumpled, holding his face. Well, that wasn't too bad, she coached herself, squatting down and opening her leg pouch. Getting some zip ties, she tied his wrists and set him to slouch against the pole. Walking a few paces to the corner, she flagged down a startled-looking deputy. Purse snatcher with a gun, she gave him the weapon handle first. The officer checked the chambers. One of the 6 bullets was spent. "Assault with a deadly weapon is twice the jail time, dirtbag. Let's go!" He hauled the guy, cradling his bleeding nose, into the squad car. "Thanks, Shield Maiden. The streets are always safer with you around." "With us around, you mean?" Shield Maiden poked his chest, and he grinned bashfully at her. It felt nice that the city police force at least knew her name by now. She'd been in the paper a few times, worked with them when turning in small-time bad guys, and they tended to treat each other with respect. "Hey, the deputy looked to one side, then at her again. Can I get a picture with you?" he asked sheepishly. "The guys at the station might not believe me if I say Shield Maiden stopped to help with a purse snatcher." Shield Maiden smiled, more than a little flattered. No one had ever asked to get a picture with her before. "Sure, why not?" She nodded as he pulled out his phone. She took it, flipped it around, and they leaned in together. "Smile." She took 3, just to make sure one of them would be good. "Thanks," he said, getting in his car to go. "Oh, by the way," he paused and looked startled when he remembered something. "The big guy wants to talk to you." "The big guy?" Shield Maiden frowned. "Laserwolf. He put out a call, since he has a line to the city police force. If we saw you, to tell you to get in contact with him." He adjusted his hat a little. "You want to ride to the station? We have a special phone just to call him for emergencies." "I'll walk, but thank you. I'll look into it right away." Shield Maiden gave him another dazzling smile. "I have a purse to return first," she said, holding up the bag the man had taken. "Oh, right, of course." The officer tipped his hat at her, and they parted ways. "Stay safe." She turned into an alleyway, leapt up a fire escape, and started jumping from rooftop to rooftop between crowded buildings. Only a couple of blocks over, and about 20 minutes of searching later, she found the distressed little old lady. Sliding back down to street level, she returned the stolen purse. The old woman thanked her and hugged her around the middle, praising her good deed. "Always glad to help, ma'am," she said with a cocky salute. Then she went on her way. "So, Laserwolf wants to talk to me, huh?" She touched thumb and forefinger to her chin. The nearest police station was less than a mile away. If she just walked in, would they arrest her for being a vigilante? Surely not. She'd already proven her mettle against Lord Dragon, 10-ton gun shogun, judge, jury, and many small-time criminals these past few months. They trusted her by now, right? Right. She shouldn't have anything to worry about. The walk was short, and Shield Maiden mounted the stairs into Precinct 229. She hesitated and then pulled the door and walked inside. Instantly, everyone stared at her. A tall black woman in a leotard holding a round shield with a banner mask and boots waited patiently in line. The people in front of her had no idea she was there, and the people behind her stared. After a few minutes of waiting her turn, she arrived at the front desk. Ma'am?" the man behind the counter said. "What brings you here?" "I'm told Laserwolf wants to speak to me," Shield Maiden said. "If you'll pardon the insult, how do I know you're the real deal and not a normal person dressed up like Shield Maiden?" he said, looking her up and down. "You called me." She frowned at him. "That aside, ma'am, if you plan around walking around in our precinct, you'll have to surrender your weapon," he said. Shield Maiden looked down at herself. She wasn't carrying any weapons. "The shield?" he insisted, pointing. Oh, sorry," she said, passing it across the desk to him. He slid it off the desk and it clanked to the floor. He grunted, pulling at it back and forth. He could barely lift it. "It's pretty heavy, yeah," she said, scratching the back of her head. The officer's face was red and his cheeks were puffed out. "I guess that's proof enough?" He finally gave up, laying it flat on the floor behind the desk and collapsing into his chair. Only a superhero like Shield Maiden could be so strong as to wield something that heavy with such ease. He wiped the sweat off his brow and nodded at her. "So where do I go to use the laser phone?" Shield Maiden giggled like it was a joke. "How'd you know we call it that?" Another officer chuckled and gestured for her. "This way, miss." She smiled to the foreman and followed the new police officer. There were more stairs as she was led through the building. "Thank you for coming so quickly. Laserwolf is a great superhero, but he can be cranky sometimes," he said with a wavering motion of his hand. "I've noticed he's a little clinical," Shield Maiden said. "But what can you expect, I guess? The guy's a robot." He touched his temple a few times. "No emotions and all that circuitry." His salt and pepper mustache twitched back and forth as he spoke. "But I've seen him do a lot of good over the years. The city police force trusts his judgment. My only question is," he led her through a doorway to a more secure-looking area. The doors were thicker, the lights were brighter, and the people moving back and forth with their busy workday. "Why is he asking after you and not asking for our help?" He gave her a meaningful look. People were looking up from clipboards, copy machines, and other busy work at them. The murmur of the room got louder as they passed by. "My guess is it's something big. If he doesn't want the city police force involved, it's probably more dangerous than he gives us credit for. You'll tell us what he tells you, right?" he wanted to know. Shield Maiden was silent as they went up some stairs and towards a fancy-looking office. "I can't promise," she said slowly. "But I will if I can," she amended when she saw him scowl. "Well, here you go," he said, gesturing. The room was covered with bookshelves, dark wood furniture, and plaques of various awards the precinct had received over the years. On a small end table, a peculiar-looking phone sat plugged into the wall. Shield Maiden couldn't remember the last time she'd seen an actual ground line phone, and she ran an antique store. "Come out when you're ready to leave." He pulled the door shut behind himself. Shield Maiden walked slowly across the room. A little couch awaited her, and she sat. It all felt so formal, like she was sitting in a governor's office or waiting to meet the principal of a high school because her child had been bad. It looked like an English gentleman's study, really. Hard to believe this was in a police station. Checking that the door was closed and the window shut, she reached and picked up the receiver. She had no idea what number to dial, but she quickly saw there were no numbers. She put it to her ear. Right away, Shield Maiden heard the prickling sound of a computer rapidly dialing for her. The silvery smooth phone casing shimmered in the bright lights. It was an elegant thing. She flinched back when a few panels popped open and a quartet of soft blue lights scanned her over. The line clicked. Someone had picked up. Shield Maiden. The robotic voice was his. The most powerful superhero in the city, Laserwolf. She cleared her throat. I heard you wanted to speak to me, Shield Maiden said. You may speak plainly. The room is soundproof, and this phone prevents recording by supersonic noise frequencies, he said. How do I know it's really you? She thought about the guy at the desk. I do not have to prove my legitimacy to you, Wanda Summers, he said. Fair enough. Please don't use my real name like that, Shield Maiden said with a frown. Now she knew it was really him. What do you want? She asked. There is a train arriving via portal from Saturn several days from now. We must safely bring it to a halt and help extract the 100 dead bodies aboard, Laserwolf said. There was a long, chilling silence. Shield Maiden tried very hard to break down everything that sentence had entailed. Say again? Shield Maiden said. Those were all words, but, Months ago, I fought Dr. Galaxy one-on-one. Shield Maiden's neck hair prickled at the name. Dr. Galaxy was the one villain never caught by any superhero. He was also the one who had destroyed her apartment building during the last battle with Laserwolf and Gel Girl. I was able to harm him, but not enough. As punishment, he later opened a portal in the middle of a subway station track and allowed a train full of civilians to pass through it. The train was never seen on Earth again. How many people were on that train? She whispered, wide-eyed. Estimates say over 100, Laserwolf said. After he incapacitated me, Dr. Galaxy promised the train would return in 5 months' time, as it was now orbiting Saturn. Long-range telescopes have confirmed this to be true. Do you think he was telling the truth? That he would bring it back after all this time? Dr. Galaxy is many things. A liar is not one of them, Laserwolf said. When a being becomes as powerful as he, there is no reason to lie about anything. He is currently beyond our capacity for punishment or capture. You've tried so many times to catch him. Shield Maiden trailed off before she offended the 12-foot-tall robot Wolfman. There was a long silence. Yes, Laserwolf said after a time. I require your presence to keep the peace when the train arrives. Nothing more. You don't want me to help you track down Dr. Galaxy? No, Laserwolf said sharply. He is beyond your ability to combat. You would be thrown into the sun in the blink of an eye. How far can he send those portals of his? Shield Maiden wanted to know. Data not found, Laserwolf said. She sighed at him, scrubbing her hair a little. Will you help me coordinate this train recovery? Yes, of course, Shield Maiden said. Good. I will send you the time and coordinates. The phone stand suddenly hummed and spat out a little receipt of paper. There was a timestamp and a long string of numbers. Laserwolf? Shield Maiden asked. Yes. I can't read this. I can't read coordinates. She felt lame saying it out loud. There was a long silence. 1 moment. There was another long pause, and the phone stand spat out a second paper. Instead of numbers, it was a plainly written address. Query, he said robotically. What is it? What is the extent of your healing factor? My what? You appear to heal at a rate far higher than those of a normal human, Laserwolf said. How is it done? Data not found, Shield Maiden said. She hung up the phone. Her benefactor would kill her if she breathed a word about her mere existence, much less her powers and abilities. Crumpling the first paper, she threw it into a wastebasket. She took the second one and folded it into her leg pouch. So Laser Wolf didn't want the police involved right away because Dr. Galaxy could just rip open a portal and toss the lot of them into outer space. Just one person getting antsy and firing a gun could doom a lot of innocent people. It made sense. A few days later, Shield Maiden sat on a bench overlooking a large train yard. One of the tracks had been cleared. No doubt Laser Wolf had had a few words with the workers there and had made space on the tracks. She rested her chin on her hand and her elbow on her knee. Then she heard the whir of a familiar jetpack. Laser Wolf landed on the path nearby with a squeal of hydraulics. She stood to face him and he stopped in front of her. "Good to see you again, big guy," she offered. Laser Wolf said nothing, but turned towards the track to keep watch. There was a long silence as the sun dipped towards the horizon. Lights on poles started to turn on as the last few trains arrived to park and be taken apart, car by car. A long line of cars pulled lazily away, blasting its air horn as it went. The breeze ruffled Shield Maiden's hair. When the sun was halfway past the horizon, Laser Wolf turned to her. "There is another detail I failed to mention over the phone." "What is it?" Shield Maiden asked. "There may be one survivor aboard the train." "What?" She gaped at him. "Impossible! You said the train was orbiting Saturn." "That is true." "Then who could possibly be alive after being in space for 5 months?" "Gel Girl," he said. "Gel Girl?" Shield Maiden said. Gel Girl was another superhero that made this city her home, but she'd not been seen in the papers or heard from since the formerly mentioned fight with Dr. Galaxy. Shield Maiden had assumed that she was taking a break or something. "That's why she's gone silent lately," she whispered. "Yes," Laser Wolf droned, scanning about the train yard. "Gel Girl tried to stop the train before it entered the portal. She failed." "You think she's alive after all this time?" "Her unique chemical makeup allows her to do many, many things with the shape of her body. It is possible she survived under certain circumstances," Laser Wolf said. "Oh, I get it. Elvis didn't die. He was abducted by aliens," Shield Maiden said thoughtfully. "Exactly. A superhero does not die. They retire. They go home. They do anything other than die," Laser Wolf said. "The public must not know when a superhero is killed. It would shake their faith that we are powerful, indestructible." "So you're either here to help her recover or to collect her body before anyone sees," Shield Maiden said, touching his arm sympathetically. "That's really noble of you," she smiled a little. "I am hopeful," Laser Wolf said. His hydraulics flinched a little when Shield Maiden looked up at him sharply. "Hopeful?" "So there is someone in there," Shield Maiden smiled a little. "I look forward to the day I can meet the real you." She knocked twice on his abdomen. He said nothing and did not react, at least not outwardly. "It is time." Laser Wolf straightened, looking down at the train yard. "There he is." Shield Maiden watched his eyes flicker-flash as they zoomed in on a figure that was crossing the yard. She squinted down at him in the fading light of the sun. "That is Dr. Galaxy." He leaned a little, his jetpack whirring to life. "Come," he said, lifting off. Shield Maiden followed, down the little hill and into the train yard. Even as she approached, she could see the man was strange and unusual. He glittered with an otherworldly aura. Tiny flecks of light hovered around him and all over his English gentleman's suit. He took off his bowler hat as they got close. "Good evening, Laser Wolf. Sorry to keep you waiting. Hawaii is very nice this time of year." He took off his tiny circular sunglasses, and Shield Maiden was startled by his glowing golden eyes. "Oh, I don't believe we've met." Shield Maiden walked forward as though in a trance. This was Dr. Galaxy? The city-destroying, train-stealing, laser-wolf-stomping supervillain? He looks so frail. He's just an old man. She stopped arm's length from him, staring down at him with bald curiosity. I, he gestured to himself, am Dr. Galaxy.